Welcome to Barbara's Bulletin, the podcast where we bring you the latest news and updates from around the world. We're starting off with a look at some significant developments in the European Union. The EU Commission is set to table a blueprint on humanitarian aid reform later this year, amid growing concerns that the traditional model of development aid is no longer effective. This reset is expected to address the challenges and changes facing the humanitarian system, including finding new ways to work with other actors, such as the private sector. In related news, the EU has allocated €9 billion for humanitarian aid in the 2026 budget, demonstrating its commitment to being a responsible humanitarian donor. However, the traditional aid model of governments aspiring to meet a UN-agreed target of spending 0.7% of gross national income on humanitarian aid is facing significant challenges. Meanwhile, the United Nations is facing its own existential crisis due to collapsing support from donors, including the US and some EU member states. The OECD is hosting a summit in May to discuss strategic directions for international development cooperation in a changing world, and the World Economic Forum has set up a Global Future Council on reimagining aid to explore new principles and concepts for international cooperation. On another note, the EU Commission's move to reform humanitarian aid comes as the bloc is also navigating other significant issues, including its response to the ongoing conflict in Ukraine and its relations with other global powers. We'll be keeping a close eye on these developments and bringing you updates as more information becomes available. We'll also be looking at other major stories from around the world, including the latest on global politics, economics, and social issues. Our goal is to provide you with a balanced and informative look at the news without taking sides or promoting any particular agenda. We'll be right back with more of today's top news on Barbara's Bulletin. Welcome back to Barbara's Bulletin. We're diving into the latest developments in international relations as U.S. President Donald Trump and Chinese President Xi Jinping engaged in a highly anticipated phone call. The two leaders discussed a range of topics, including the sensitive issue of Taiwan and potential trade agreements. According to reports, President Xi warned the U.S. to be prudent in its dealings with Taiwan, which China claims as its own territory. This comes after the U.S. announced a significant arms sales package to Taiwan, valued at over $11 billion. The move has been met with strong opposition from China, which conducted military drills around the island in response. On the trade front, President Trump announced that China is considering increasing its purchases of U.S. soybeans, potentially up to 20 million tons in the current season. This would be a significant boost to U.S. farmers and could help ease tensions between the two nations. It's worth noting that both leaders have expressed a desire to strengthen their personal relationship and improve ties between their countries. President Trump is expected to visit China in April, which will be his first trip to the country since taking office. As we continue to monitor this developing story, it's clear that the complex relationship between the U.S. and China will remain a major focus of international attention. With both nations vying for influence on the world stage, it's essential to approach these issues with nuance and understanding. Welcome back to Barbara's Bulletin. As we wrap up today's show, let's take a closer look at the ongoing conflict between Russia and Ukraine. The situation has been escalating, with Russia becoming increasingly obsessed with gaining control over Ukraine. Despite the challenges they face, Ukrainian forces have been holding their ground, thanks in part to support from Europe and the United States. However, the involvement of other global players, such as China and North Korea, has added complexity to the situation. The United States, under President Trump's leadership, has been taking a more assertive approach in the region, which has led to increased tensions between Washington and Moscow. It's worth noting that Russia's global position has been weakened by its ongoing conflict with Ukraine, and the country is facing significant economic and diplomatic challenges as a result. Nevertheless, Russian President Putin remains committed to his goals in Ukraine, and it's likely that the conflict will continue to escalate in the coming months. As the international community navigates this complex and volatile situation, it's essential to approach the issue with nuance and understanding. The consequences of the conflict are far-reaching, with potential implications for global stability and security. In conclusion, the Russia-Ukraine conflict is a multifaceted issue that requires careful consideration and analysis. As we move forward, it's crucial to prioritize diplomacy and cooperation while also acknowledging the complexities and challenges that lie ahead. That's all for today's Barber's Bulletin. Remember to like, share, and subscribe, and until next time, stay engaged.